Ren and Stimpy was nuts. Like, the fact that this show even existed along with its legacy is kind of mind-boggling. From the crude humor to the excessive violence to the very shaky reputation of its creator, Ren and Stimpy is probably the most bizarre kid show of all time. So bizarre that it eventually became an adult cartoon. If you watched the original Ren and Stimpy in the 90s, you were probably either thoroughly entertained or a little bit disturbed, or maybe a bit of both. Ren and Stimpy premiered on Nickelodeon in 1991, following the insane misadventures of a short-tempered chihuahua and his simple-minded best friend, designed by the brilliantly deranged John Kay. Nickelodeon wanted a show with a more educational tone, with some sort of moral or lesson being taught, so they were pretty annoyed when the staff of Ren and Stimpy went in a very different direction. Ren and Stimpy was about as close to an adult cartoon as a children's cartoon can possibly get, and there weren't exactly morals being taught. It was just a slapstick comedy meant to make the audience laugh. Ren and Stimpy scenes were often removed by Nickelodeon for being too violent, gruesome, or having sexual innuendos. Scenes were also removed for having references to alcohol, religion, and politics. Nickelodeon was constantly receiving letters from parents complaining about how inappropriate this show was for children, demanding it being taken off the air. The letters didn't stop John Kay and his team. They were committed to pushing boundaries and constantly fitting as much adult humor in the show as they could without Nickelodeon removing it, always trying to see how far they could take it before it was too far. And this was obviously a headache for Nickelodeon. But it was also a huge part of the reason the show was so praised and beloved by critics and fans. The first season of Ren and Stimpy currently holds a 100% on Rotten Tomatoes. Matt Groening, creator of The Simpsons, praised the show for its outrageousness and called it the only good cartoon on TV at the time, other than The Simpsons. Fans around the world, both children and adults, were incredibly drawn to the wacky, outrageous, edgy, dark humor of Ren and Stimpy, since there was nothing else like it on TV, especially in children's animation. So John Kay continued to push as far as he could until he went too far. And apparently he went so far that he lost his job and got fired from Nickelodeon. The episode that got him fired? Man's Best Friend. In the episode, George Liquor is standing outside a pet store and he sees Ren and Stimpy sleeping. He decides to adopt Ren and Stimpy. To make room for Ren and Stimpy, George kicks his pet fish out of his fishbowl. His fish then steals his car while smoking a cigarette. He forces Ren and Stimpy to now squeeze in this fishbowl and live there. The next day, George trains them drill sergeant style. He makes them do these weird butt drills to train them to poop on newspapers. Ren doesn't poop, Stimpy poops pretty easily, and he gets a cigar-shaped dog treat as a reward. That's 2 tobacco references for those of you keeping count at home. Lastly, he teaches them to protect their master. But before they learn to defend, they have to learn to attack. Wearing a padded suit, he urges the 2 of them to attack him. Stimpy refuses because George is his kind and beloved master. But Ren is more than willing to attack him. Picks up an oar and maniacally begins beating him with it while Stimpy watches terrified. Ren expects George to be furious. Instead, he's impressed and calls him a champion and produces cigar-shaped treats for all of them. The episode ends with the 3 of them dancing with the cigar-shaped treats clamped between their teeth. But the episode was banned from airing. Did it deserve that? The reasons cited for the banning were the excessive violence in the scene where Ren beat up George and the references to tobacco. Honestly, the scene wasn't even that violent, and the logical thing to do would be for Nickelodeon to just send it back and tell them to tone the scene down. But I think it was more of a straw that broke the camel's back situation, if anything. It was later revealed that constant missed deadlines as well as creating a hostile work environment were factors of his termination. So basically, it seems Nickelodeon was just pretty much sick of John Kay, and this episode was the tipping point that led to him getting fired. You have to imagine that they were tired of John Kay wasting their time and money making episodes that he knew they weren't going to allow. So it was really a culmination of things that got John Kay fired, but this episode was the final straw that lost him his job. John Kay's slow production pace was even made fun of in a Simpsons episode, where Ren and Stimpy's season premiere was nominated for an award, but the screen reads, "Clip not done yet." So the chronic lateness, along with being considered unprofessional, were getting on Nickelodeon's nerves, and Man's Best Friend was what finally made them fire him. Years later, Ren and Stimpy became an adult cartoon on Spike TV, Ren and Stimpy's Adult Party cartoon. And it was so trash. You probably already know how trash it was, but if not, just take my word for it. In the adult series, Man's Best Friend aired for the first time. It was rated TV MA, but it was way less adult than any of the other episodes. The show only made it 3 episodes in before getting canceled. Overall, Ren and Stimpy is a pretty bizarre show. At its best, it was a groundbreaking show and pushed the envelope, and at its worst, it was an insult to the audience. It's a show covered in controversy on and off the screen. In the episode Man's Best Friend is the moment it all began to fall apart. Sound off in the comments with your thoughts on Ren and Stimpy, and be sure to like this video and subscribe to Toon Fridge for more cartoon content. Thanks for watching.